Hello, Kim. I hope I can make a nice little crochet tutorial for you. Here I already did a chain and then the first row because I think in crochet the beginning is probably one of the hardest parts. And so if I'm learning crochet, or when I was learning crochet from Mom, it was easier to start with something that she had made, and then I can go in and look at the stitches, and then after that then it's easier to kind of start. So I'll show you some stitches here, and then I can go back and do the chain, and you can see that. And you wanted to make a pattern that was worked in the round with a magic circle, and so we'll do that too. And I picked the biggest yarn that I had. It's kind of chunky, so hopefully it's easy to see. So with crochet, you have individual stitches that you're working into, and from the top it kind of looks like a little V. So you can see that this is one stitch with the V, and then here's another stitch with the V, and there's another stitch with the V. And then on the side you can see that this is part of that one stitch. This is one single crochet and another stitch and another stitch. So the basic stitches are going into the top of the V. So let's say that the next stitch I want to do, I'll do it in order of how many movements it takes, if that makes sense. So the slip stitch is the smallest amount. It's the easiest. It doesn't require as much. So for the slip stitch, you have your hook here, and your hook will already have the yarn on it. So whenever you want to start a stitch, you would go under the V. So you just have these two loops on the hook. So if you do that, then you'll have a total of 3, including this guy. So then you'll have these two, and you kind of go into the side here, and you can pull it up and see that there's a space under there. So this is going into the first stitch. So yeah, there's a space. So let's do one slip stitch. So slip stitch is abbreviated SL or SLST, and ST is usually stitch. So then you would come under and you hook your yarn. So this is what they call a yarn over, because you go here. So they would say, if they wanted to give you instructions on how to do this stitch specifically, they would say insert hook into stitch. So that's step 1. Yarn over. That's step 2. Pull yarn through stitch. And this hook is a little small for this yarn, but so this is pulling through the stitch. So for a slip stitch, it's really easy. You just insert and yarn over, and you pull through all the loops on your hook. So that is a stitch that people usually use to finish a row or something, because it's the flattest and the smallest, and you can kind of see if you sewed it that you don't really see much bulk there. And the next one, which is one of the most common, is the single crochet stitch. So people abbreviate that as SC, single crochet. A lot of times at the beginning of the pattern they'll have the little guides. So for a single crochet, then you just insert it, yarn over, pull through, and then now you've got these two, and you yarn over again and pull through both. So this is what the previous row was made of, is these single crochets. So you can see this single crochet here. And there's the V. The slip stitch also has a V. So this is the V on top that you'll work in on the next row. So that's a single crochet. So I'll undo it. So single crochet is you go in at your V, you yarn over, pull through these two, keeping this first guy there, and then you yarn over and pull through both of these. So there we go. So then they do a half double crochet and it's kind of a weird naming convention, but for the half double crochet, for the double crochet, if that, I don't know if it'll be easier to do a double crochet first. Maybe we'll do a double crochet first and then the half double crochet after that. So double crochet is you yarn over before you put it into the stitch. So now I've got these two loops, and then I'm going to go into the stitch and yarn over again and pull it back out. So now there's 3. So for a double crochet, you yarn over, pull through 2. So now you have 2, yarn over again, pull through 2. So now you can see this guy is much taller than this one. So double crochet will be longer. They don't use that as much in the stuffed animals and stuff. They usually do that with single crochet only. But you'll see double crochet in blankets, clothes, afghans. So it's a common one. So the half double crochet, well actually let me just do that again. I should probably just do everything twice so you can see. So for the double crochet, we yarn over once before going into the stitch, and then we go into the stitch and yarn over and pull through. So then you got 3 guys. So you yarn over, pull through 2, and then you have 2. So you yarn over, pull through 2. So that's the end of the double crochet, which is abbreviated as DC usually. So there's 1 double crochet. So the half double crochet starts the same. Since they're so related, that's probably why they call it a half double crochet. So for this next stitch, that V there, we'll yarn over once before going into the stitch, go into the stitch, yarn over and pull through. So now there's 3 on the hook, which is the same as the double crochet. So now we're going to yarn over, and this is where it's different, because in the double crochet you would go through these 2, yarn over, and then go through 2. But in the half double crochet it's shorter, it's smaller, so we're going to go through all 3 of them. So the half double crochet is a bit shorter than the double crochet. So you can see there. And it has this little V on top. And it's a fun stitch. I like doing half double crochets across, and then it kind of makes it stretchy. It's pretty cute. You can do different things. Sometimes people work into this loop and this loop and this loop, or they do the first 2 or they do the last 2, and so they can do lots of different kind of configurations and designs with the half double crochet, but it's more complicated to kind of work into different loops than just the top V. So I think that beginner patterns will usually just kind of do the top V, and stuffed animals and amigurumi will usually just do this top V, and they usually just have single crochets, and so they don't have to worry about a lot of the really hard ones. That's the half double crochet. So for the half double crochet, HDC is what it's usually abbreviated. You'll yarn over once before you go into the stitch, and you go in, you yarn over and pull through. So now you've got 3, and you'll yarn over and pull through all 3. I got kind of blurry there, but now I've pulled through all 3 of these loops, and that's the end of the half double crochet. So it's pretty easy. I like this one. And I don't see this as much, but there's also a treble crochet, which is like 3. Sometimes they're called triple crochets, treble or triple crochets. So they do TC or TBC for treble crochet, and that's not that common, but you can see how you can keep just increasing this length of that crochet. So for a treble crochet, you yarn over, so you do twice. So you wrap it around twice before you go in. And it's just kind of like a double crochet, but you just do more stitches and more loops. So you've got twice, go in, yarn over, pull through, got 4 of them, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So it's the whole process of pulling through 2, pulling through 2, and pulling through 2. And you can see that it's really tall. This one's a very big boy, so this isn't used as much. If you made a stuffed animal with this, it'd have a lot of holes in it. You can make some blankets, doilies, things like that. This is one of those that has very big posts, so then people can like go in here, do fancy things with that, which would be more complicated doing like front post and back post crochets. So if you have a pattern with the post, like a front post crochet or a back post crochet, I can make a video on how to do that, but that's more complicated. So right now we just have these things. So I've got triple crochet or treble crochet. Treble like the musical clef treble. So to do that, we do yarn over once, yarn over twice, so it's all wrapped. So we got 3 of them, and then we insert into the stitch, into the top V, yarn over, pull through, got 4, and now we just yarn over and pull through 2 over and over again, 3 times. So we yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that's our treble crochet or our triple crochet, TC. Not as common. So those are some of the most common crochets that you will see. And there's lots of other crochets that are combinations of these ones. They might be like, now do the shell, and then there'll be parentheses, and they'll be like, this is what the shell is. The shell is 2 double crochets and a chain, and then 2 double crochets or something like that. Or like, this is a bobble stitch, and then you look up bobble stitch, and the bobble stitch is like 3 treble crochets with a chain or something like that. So fancy stitches like that, if you go on Pinterest, there'll be things that are like, learn how to do the waffle stitch, learn how to do the ivy stitch, and it's not like a whole separate stitch, it's just usually a kind of combination of these kind of basic stitches. Sometimes they're in a certain position where they make the stitch look a certain way, but those are the basic ones that are used in pretty much all crochet. So I'm undoing this. So I will show you how to do the initial chain and how to go into that, and then I'll do the magic circle, And if you just want to do things in the rounds, in circles like the stuffed animals, then you probably wouldn't really be using this straight chain as much. But this is, usually people learn this before they do the magic circle. So to start, you need a little, what do they call it? Slip stitch or something like that. So you need a little loop, and the way that I like to do it is pretty easy, is you take the yarn on your 2 fingers, and then you wrap it around, and then on the top of your fingers you can see these 2 loops. So then I go under this one and into this one, and then I yarn over, or kind of just pull it through. So you have like a knot there, so then you can just pull this. So now you have a starting loop for your hook, and you can make it tighter by pulling a little working tail. And if you don't know which tail to pull, you just like, if you pull this one and it doesn't move, and you're like, alright, well I gotta pull this one. So, and then you can pull it even more, just undo it. And this tail, sometimes it'll say leave a long tail for sewing, so then it wants you to sew like different body parts together for a stuffed animal or something like that. So usually leaving a long tail, I would say, is like 12 inches, like a foot or something like that, and you can't really see as much, but maybe just like this much, and depends on what you're sewing together. But we can leave a long tail. Doesn't matter how long the tail is, you can still do this little loop pretty easy. So we've got this tail is here, so I can hold that, and I bring it over like this in a little cross X. So we've got these 2 on top. So I go under this one and catch that and bring it through. And you can kind of hold the yarn with your thumb as you bring it through so that you can pull that through. So now that's off. And you only really need to hold the 2 kind of end bits, because then there's that knot in the middle, so then you just pull. And then now you have the little slip stitch, or whatever you would call it, slip knot. And then you can pull it tighter. So that's really nice. I love doing that. Some people do it with 3 fingers or their whole hand, or some people do it different ways. And then you just kind of tighten it a little. Like the starting chain is usually kind of loose, so because you don't want it to be like, now I've tightened it so much that it can't even come off the hook, and so you wouldn't want that. So if you can make it a little bit looser where it can come off. Mom always said, like, if it doesn't go over the handle, then it's good. She was like, if it just fits over the biggest part of the handle, but that also depends on how big the hook is. So some of them are really big. But so now we've got the beginning, and we're going to chain. So a chain is when you yarn over and you pull through what is on your hook. So a chain is probably the easiest of stitches, if you would call it a stitch, because you don't have to go into another stitch, so you don't have to work into any stitches at all to do a chain. You just yarn over and then you pull through what is on your hook, so then you can chain more. This hook is a little bit small for this yarn, so it slips over, because sometimes the yarn will kind of like come over like that or something, and then the hook doesn't grab it all. But if you have smaller yarn, it'll be easier. So you can chain, you can chain, you can chain, and I just think it's easy to hold this with the one hand, chain, and when I'm doing crochet, I usually kind of hold things with this, and then the yarn can go through my other fingers. There's not one proper way to do it. You can kind of have your yarn in different fingers. I think it's just whatever way you find is easy to kind of control this yarn. So I guess I would grab it with my pinky. But that's something that I wasn't explicitly taught. It was just something that I was like, this makes sense to do, to hold it like this. And the same with holding the crochet hook or holding anything. It's kind of like, I don't know, learning how to hold a pencil. Sometimes they'll try to teach you specific ways, but like you hold your pencil a little differently, so you can just kind of learn whichever way feels good. So I can do that. It's when I hold it like this and I can kind of bring my yarn over like that. So whatever way works for you. So we can chain as much as we want. So let's pretend like we're following a pattern here, I think. So I'll make the little knot. So maybe the pattern says chain 10. Chain 10 stitches. So we're like, all right. 1, got 1 stitch, 1 V. 2, 3, and the looseness of this is something that's easier when you practice and figure out how loose things should be. But I would say that you shouldn't have it really tight. This is pretty loose and pretty nice. You can have it even looser if you're making like a blanket or something. With amigurumi and stuffed animals, people usually have it a little tighter. But that's something that's kind of hard to tell when you're just starting. I think as long as you can go into the stitch, like this is loose enough that I can go into the stitch, I can see it kind of moving around, then that's good. And it's not so big that it's all just full of holes. Like I think if I were making a blanket, I'd make this even looser though, because this is a little bit tighter, but you're doing amigurumi, or at least that one pattern. So let's do this, and I did lose track, but let's count. So we've got 1 V, 2 V's, 3 V's, 4 V's, and this guy on the hook. So that means we have chained 4. We have chained 4 stitches. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 V's. So now we go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now I've got 10. Chain 10. And it looks like a cute little braid. So this next row is always the hardest for me, because it kind of sucks working into the chain. So if this isn't something that is in your pattern and you're just doing the rounds, then you won't need to worry about this as much. So let's say that maybe it says single crochet into second chain from hook, which is a common thing. So usually we kind of would chain like 11 and then the row would be 10, but here we just chain 10, so then maybe the row is just 9. So this is the first chain from the hook. We got this V. So this is the second chain from the hook. So got this loop, it's V, first chain, V, second chain. So single crochet into second chain from hook. So we want to go under this V. With this chain stitch, it's a little bit hard sometimes to go under the V because you just have this one yarn on the bottom. So that's why it's kind of difficult. So with single crochet, we just yarn, we insert into the stitch, yarn over, pull out, yarn over, pull out. So if we're going into the second chain from the hook, I gotta wiggle it a little bit. See, now we're into the first little loop of the V. It's like, all right, now let's wiggle into the second loop. There you go. Now we're in the second loop of the V. And if we look at the underside, we've got one yarn strand on the bottom, two on the top. So that's what the chain stitch will usually be like. You have the one on the bottom and then the two on the top. So let's do a single crochet. So let's yarn over, pull through the stitch, the V. Now we've got two on our hook. Yarn over, pull through two. And now we have a cute little single crochet. You can see the V here. So that's very nice. So now we just continue. So maybe it'll say single crochet into second chain from hook and single crochet all the way across. And then at the end it'll be parentheses 9 or something like that, and then I'll have 9 stitches in that row, so then you can count it at the end. So if I want to single crochet into this guy, and I wiggle it a little bit to get into that V. Wiggle, wiggle, there we go. So now there's two on top, one on the bottom. Yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through. Second single crochet. So we can just do that for the rest of them. De-wiggle. If I'm going at full speed here, you can still see that I'm struggling a little bit to get it in there, to wiggle it under the two loops. So that's why it's more difficult to crochet into this starting chain. It's really easy to get like some of the strands of the yarn without getting them all, and sometimes you're getting some strands of yarn that are like in the other stitch, and so it can be kind of hard. And sometimes when you pull through, then you'll get strands of yarn that aren't supposed to be there. See, because right there I almost just kind of like, if I go through here, then that's not going through the stitch, you're just going through this one little part of the yarn, because the yarn is made of these multiple little strands. So you want to try to make sure that you get all the strands. So we got through that V. Gotta wiggle. Alright, so he's through there. And then I use my fingers to kind of move around the yarn too. Just force it onto the hook. It's like, all right, we're gonna put this strand onto the hook. We're gonna make sure that this one goes under. And then this one goes over, so it's okay to kind of gonna wiggle this guy onto the hook and wiggle it out. So now we have got our row of single crochets, and I think that there will be 9 because we chained 10, went into the second chain from the hook, so we can count. So we've got the V's. So 1V, 2V, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we've got 9 single crochet stitches. So there's no extra V over here. We don't count this little thingy as a stitch. That's the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 single crochets. So at the end of the row, a lot of times it'll say chain 1 turn, or chain 2 turn, or chain 3 turn. So let's chain 1. So we pull this over, take it through. So now I've chained 1. We didn't work into any stitches, we just kind of pulled through that loop. So to turn the work, I think that you can kind of do this differently depending on the person. I just kind of turn it this way, and then the yarn is kind of weird when it's in front, so then I take it to the back. That's the little tail that we started with. So now I've got this yarn in the back, which is more comfortable working, and you can put it in there. So if we go back around, we had this. Now the directions say chain 1 turn, so we've chained 1 and we turn, so we just want to flip the work. And then for me it's easier to have the yarn in the back instead of in the front like this, if you can see that it's in the front. So then I just kind of move it to the back and get the tail out of the way. So now we have turned, and then now maybe it says work single crochet in all stitches across, and then it'll say parentheses 9, so we have 9 single crochets. So we've got this little V here, and here is interesting because we have this chain. This is our working loop, this is our chain, and this is our first stitch. And if you just try to work into the first V that you see, you'll be working into that chain, which we don't work into. Usually when you chain one on the side, you don't work into this at all. So you just work into the first stitch, and you can kind of see that this is the first stitch. That's this first little space that you see on this block that we're making. So this is the first stitch. So then it's like, all right, well, if we want a single crochet, then we go in, yarn over, pull out, yarn over, pull through 2. And now we have another single crochet. So you can see the side here will be all lined up when we get a bunch more rows. So this is the next stitch, and we can make another single crochet. And then we keep going, we flip, we come back, we flip, we come back, and then you just kind of go back and forth and you create a really long whatever you're making, like a scarf or a blanket, and you just do different stitches, whatever stitches it wants you to do. So now I want to kind of reference the magic circle with all the stuffed animals. Doop. The amigurumi usually uses single crochets in the round, and it's really easy. I love doing things in the round. I think that the first thing that I crocheted by myself without mom was in the round. So to do a magic circle is sometimes a little tricky. I used to look up tutorials like every time I started just to make sure that I was doing it right. But so for a magic circle, it's kind of the same as like the initial chain. So I've got my whole hand here so that the circle is bigger. I've crossed it over, And when I turn my hand over, then you can see the yarn there. I'll actually do this with 3 fingers so I can hold it with my pinky. So 3 fingers over, and then I'll hold the yarn with my pinky because I think it's easier. So we do the same thing at first. Now we've got this up, this little loop. Let me see. Gotta make sure I'm doing this right. Yep, alright. For a second I was slightly confused. I was worried I was doing it wrong, but nope. So, because it's harder when you're going slow and things look different. So, I'm going to use my 3 fingers and turn it over and hold my pinky like that. Go under the first and then drag the second through. And for the regular one with the chain, you would kind of drag this through and then tighten it. But here we're just kind of going to pull that up a little bit. And then this is kind of tricky sometimes with the way that your hand works, but then you want to take the working yarn, so you could see this is the loose yarn that's headed toward the skein, the big ball of yarn that you have. So you pull this up and then you go under here and you pull through. So now you have a chain here, kind of. This is the start of your magic circle. So if the instruction says magic circle chain 1, then this is my magic circle. I will chain 1, and it looks like that we've chained 2, but it's just because the magic circle, the first thing when you kind of put it together, is 1 chain, so that's fine. We got these 2 V's, so it's magic circle chain 1, and then you can work into the circle. And I'll do the circle again so that you can see. Let me do that slower. So if I wanted to do like a single crochet into the magic circle, I would go into the stitch, and the stitch in this case is a big circle. And then we would yarn over and pull through. And it can be kind of hard to keep this there, but you can kind of hold this away. And then we would yarn over, pull through 2, and that's our single crochet. So now I have 1 single crochet in the circle. So I can make another single crochet, go into the stitch, which is the big circle, so you go into the circle, yarn over, pull through, got 2 loops, yarn over, pull through. Now you have another single crochet. So maybe it says single crochet 6 into the loop. So far we've got 1, 2, and it'll look like we've got another one there, but that's part of the very first stitch. That's the chain, so it might be kind of confusing. We've got 1, 2, and so let me stop here and show stitch markers, because I think that'd be a good place. Those stitch markers can be anything that you use to know where your stitches are, and they're used, I think, most commonly in the rounds. Sometimes you'll use it when you're doing rows. So I got 3 ways to do the stitch markers. So maybe I'm here and I say I want to mark this first stitch so that I know that this one is stitch number 1, because when we tighten it might be hard to know which one is stitch number 1. So these are stitch markers that you can buy in the craft store, and there's ones that look differently too. I think these are more cheap ones. So you can use this to put around your stitch, and these ones, they kind of open like that. So then I would take my fingers and move it like that. So then I go, okay, I want to mark, I'm going to pull this a little bit more so I can take my hook out. So okay, I want to mark my first stitch. So that's my first stitch, is my V. So I just go through the whole V. So now it's marked, so then now I can see, it's like, yeah, that's the first stitch right there. So this is a stitch marker, and then I can say, yes, this is the first stitch, and then I know exactly where I am, which is important in the rounds, because then you kind of go around and around and around, you forget where you are. So that's one stitch marker. Before I bought stitch markers, I used safety pins, which work good too. So I could open my safety pin, and I want to mark my stitch. So then I'll go into the V, say, alright, there we go, it's in the V, and close it up for safety. So then now we know where the first stitch is. So we got this in the V. So whenever we get there, then we can take this out, move it, whatever. So that's the mark for that stitch. And for someone who is really down on their luck, or maybe you're in an airplane or something and you forgot your stitch markers and your safety pins, and you go, how do I even mark this? You can mark it with yarn. I don't like doing it with yarn if I have to, because then the yarn kind of comes out, but you can go in to your stitch. This is the first stitch. This is just a random piece of yarn. It's like a contrasting yarn so that I can see it. And then you can mark your stitch that way. You could even kind of knot it where you pull these through. So that stitch is marked. We can say that that's my first stitch. Or you could just pull through again. I'll just pull through one tail. So then I have one tail on one side and one tail on the other side. And then I could say, alright, that's my first stitch. So there's lots of different ways that you can mark your stitches. And it's very handy. So if we wanted to keep doing this, then maybe we want to do 6 single crochets in the magic ring. So, and for the magic ring, you want to use both of these strands of yarn, if that makes sense, because then if you just do, if you like leave this tail and then you just go through one, then you won't be able to tighten it very well. So I'll keep both of these strands of yarn. I'll yarn over, or I'll go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, so that's 3. Go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, that's 4. Go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, that's 5. Go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, that's 6. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let me mark this guy. Let me mark the first one with our little green stitch marker. There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 V's. So after the first row, whenever the crochet pattern uses a magic circle, that you tighten it after the first row. I've never had a pattern that had you not tighten it, and so if they wanted you to not tighten it, then it would tell you. So automatically you know, alright, we're going to go to the second row, we're going to tighten it. So then you take the end of your yarn and you pull. So it's a magic circle because it kind of closes like magic. So now you have this, and it's a little circle, and you've made the start of your little stuffed animal, or whatever circular thing you want to make, like a doily. And this is one case where I really like putting the first stitch marker in the first stitch, because I get confused with this little chain, because it looks like another stitch, you see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is the first one, and that's the chain, and that's a little red herring that we're not going to go into the chain. So then on the second row, then we'll work into this first stitch. And different patterns will say things in the notes. Sometimes they'll be like, the beginning of each row always starts with a chain, which is kind of hard to remember sometimes, because you just kind of read everything in the row, but then you also have to remember to read the notes at the beginning. So I'm looking at the little crochet cabbage pattern right now. The notes say, okay, I wonder if you can see it if I do this. The notes for this one say, pattern is worked in the round, use a stitch marker to keep proper count. Repeat instructions given between asterisks until the end of each round, which is a very common thing for them to do. Number of parentheses at the end of each round states the total number of stitches for that round, which is a common thing for them to do. Complete a size of approximately 6 inches wide. So these middle two statements, they didn't need to say these middle two, because that's a very common thing, nomenclature in these patterns. So because the notes did not say that we had to chain one before each round, I will not chain one before each round. There we go. So I just wanted to go through the process of the circle a bit before I repeated it. So now I'm going to repeat making the circle. So I'm going to undo everything. So let's make the circle again. We've got our yarn end. And I'm going to wrap around my 3 fingies and use my pinky to hold this yarn. I'm going to go under this one, go over this one, kind of pull up, and then it's a little bit hard to kind of move with your fingies, but so there I moved that working yarn that goes to the ball of yarn. So we're going to go under that, the side, and I don't think it matters what side you go in from as long as you get a yarn over. So we've got this, and we're going to yarn over and pull through. My focus is not very good. There we go. So now we've got this. We got the start of our magic ring. So then this pattern says chain 1. And oh, it looks like I missed one little bit of yarn there. So I just see that I missed that, so I'm just going to go under with the hook so I can get it all. So now it looks like I got all the yarn. So that happens sometimes, especially with the chunky yarn with these big guys, because it's really easy to go in between, because there's some yarn that's actually the size of the smaller bits. So it's very easy to do. So let's chain 1. Create magic ring, chain 1 is what the instructions will say. So we chain 1 and we go through. So now I've got 1 chain, and this first one looks like a chain, but it's not because that's part of the magic circle. So we've got 1 chain. So this cabbage pattern actually says half double crochet 7 inside circle. Magic circle, chain 1, half double crochet 7 inside circle 7. So we do 7 half double crochet stitches inside the circle, and then at the end of the row we'll have 7 stitches. So a half double crochet is not too difficult. We did that before. So we yarn over first, and we insert, yarn over, pull through. Now I've got 3 on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. So now it's a stitch that's a little bit bigger than a single crochet. So that's 1 half double crochet. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, 3 on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. That's 2 half double crochets. So at this point I usually put in the stitch marker for the first stitch, because then I can see that I've got 2. So I'll put in the stitch marker in this guy. So now I know that that is the first stitch. So now it'll be really easy to see when we finish. So now I'm going to do 3. So I'm going to yarn over, go through, yarn over, go through, 3, yarn over, go through, yarn over, 3. So now we've done 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them, and we need 7. So we got 3 more. Yarn over, go through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, 3. Okay, yarn over, go through, yarn over, go through, 3. Right, so that was probably 6, I think. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because I'm an anxious person, I always double check if I count wrong or something. I go, okay, I think that there was 6, but I'm going to double check so I can see if there's enough stitches. So counting is always nice. It gets really tedious when you do something big like an Afghan, and then they go, oh, there's 200 stitches, and you need to count 200 stitches. Like, that's so. But usually for small things, it's pretty easy. Like, all right, it's 10, 20, 30, so you can count to 30. Pretty okay. So I'm going to yarn over, go through, yarn over, pull through, pull through 3. And sometimes when I'm pulling through, I kind of wiggle my hook a little bit so I don't get snagged on any of the fibers in there. So that's nice. So now I've got this ring, and it looks like it's bending already. So, going to pull this tight. We've got this little tail. Whoop. There. And you can pull pretty tight. The yarn won't break unless it's a really lousy yarn, but yarn is meant to be pulled in this direction, so it's okay. So we've got that. So if we do the next row, 2 half double crochet in each stitch around 14. So that means the first row had 7, and we do 2 in each stitch, so then 7 plus 7 is 14, so then that makes sense mathematically. Sometimes people write these patterns and they don't know how to do math, but we know how to do math because we're smart. So we've got 2 half double crochets in each stitch around. So this is sometimes called an increase. They'll say half double crochet increase, or 2 half double crochet in each stitch, or they'll do single crochet increase, or single crochet, 2 single crochet in each stitch. And I want to know if I can, I want to look if I can find something that says like single crochet increase. Well, let me just look at my random, let's look at my random knitting and crochet stuff together. Let's go to amigurumi. Free. Okay. This one is a little amigurumi ice cream, so he is round. They're going to be well, actually, okay, they did the magic ring very weird. They just crocheted into one chain, so but we're just gonna pretend that there's a ring. So I've never seen that before. Weird, but the free patterns on Pinterest are sometimes just very bad. So they say increase around. So what is increase? What do we do? Increase what? So they have single crochets here, so we can assume that we're going to do single crochet increases. And in the next line they also have single crochet increase. They just forgot the SC here because they weren't thinking when they were writing this. So we usually have SC increase, or single crochet increase. And so then in this one, the cabbage, it would say HDC ink, half double crochet increase. Oh, actually, I see why they did this. So this is single crochet and then increase, and then single crochet and then increase. So this is just increases, so that's why they did that. But anyway, so this is an increase, and that's the same as doing 2 in one stitch. And that is very common in amigurumi. That's probably the second thing that you learn when you're doing little stuffed animals. So we're going to do 2 in each stitch. We're going to increase. So this is the first guy. I'm going to take this marker out because it can be hard to work into a stitch with a marker in it, and then I just kind of remember that is the first one. So let's go to the first one, and we don't need to work around this little tail anymore. We just kind of stick that behind. We don't need him. He's already done his job, so we thank him for his service. So I can double check which one is the first one. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I forgot that we actually did 7, which makes more sense. So here's 7. Here's the 7th one. So we're going to half double crochet increase. So we're going to yarn over, insert into here. So sometimes you'll have to bend the circle a little bit. So let's go. Shoop. Got that in there. Yarn over, pull through the loop. Shoop. Got 3. Yarn over, pull through all 3. Shoop. Now we have half double crocheted 1 into this stitch, and we need to do another one. So you can see that you worked into the stitch and you're going to go into the stitch again. So we're going to do a half double crochet increase. We're going to yarn over, insert into the same one, wiggle, 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 yarn over, wiggle, 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 pull through, yarn over, pull through, 3. Now I've got 2 half double crochets in the same stitch. So at this point, like I always said before, that I would, after I did the second stitch, then I would mark my first stitch. So this is the second stitch in the row, so then I would mark this first stitch. And you can kind of already see where it can get confusing and why we need stitch markers, because this kind of blends into these other stitches, and so then when you get done with this, then you're like, how do I know which one is my first stitch? So I remember one time Mom was like, yeah, I don't really use stitch markers, I just don't need them, I just count. And I was like, well, Mom, sometimes you do need them. It does depend on the project. If she's just doing square afghans, then she just counts and it's easy. But doing circles like this can be more difficult. So we've got that. And then we want to continue with the rest of the stitches. So we worked into this stitch, going to increase into this stitch. So we're going to do 2 half double crochets into that stitch. So I just did that really quick. Yarn over, go through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, 3. Yep. So now I've got 2 into this stitch. And when you get more familiar with the stitches, then you can actually see by looking, you go, yeah, so this little post is going into there, this little post is going into there, so therefore this stitch has an increase because I can see that these 2 stitches came out of that one stitch. So it can be kind of hard to see sometimes, but and then with this one you can kind of go, yes, that is another stitch. We can see these 2 coming out of that stitch. So then we would do this all the way around. And then you would end up with 14 stitches. So then at the end you would go, alright, this is my first one. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's kind of the basis of amigurumi. And this one is interesting because it uses half double crochets instead of single crochets, because usually they're single crochets. Like if we look at the little ice cream guy is using single crochets. The decrease is also important, so that could be kind of, this is front loop only, so there's more finish off, FO. So this pattern was written for a more advanced audience. A lot of times they write finish off, but they just did FO. So I will show you how to decrease. Let me see what this says. Oh, okay, so half double crochet together. 2 together, I guess. They can also do single crochet 2 together. So that's the same as a decrease. And so that's one of the more advanced stitches in amigurumi. And I've seen 2 different ways of doing it. The way that I do it is by a tutorial that I saw that was like how to make an invisible decrease so that it didn't look like it had a hole in it when you were finishing it, and so I always do that one. But some people do kind of different ones, and so if you look up tutorials on how to do a decrease, it might be a little bit different, but it's okay because you just need to do a stitch that combines 2 stitches into 1 stitch, which sounds really weird, but this is kind of the end of your amigurumi, because at first you're building it up and increasing, and then you're decreasing, so then you're making it smaller, and you're making the rows smaller, and then eventually you could tie up the circle and have a little ball. So, let me see if I can do, I think if I just do a flat thing, because I can't really decrease right now because the circle is getting bigger and it would be hard to decrease. So I'm going to do something flat so that you can see what a decrease would be like with that, because sometimes you do decrease when you're doing something flat too, with just the normal chain. So I'm just going to do normal chain. I'm going to chain 10 or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oh, you can't even see, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm gonna single crochet across so that we got some nice stitches to use instead of the little chains. So I single crocheted in the second stitch from the hook, which is very common. I'm struggling getting this guy through without going through like that. So let me wiggle it a little bit. Alright. Do. Single crochet. Single crochet. Single crochet. Single crochet. Single crochet. Now I've reached the end. I'm just going to chain 1 and turn and then put in 1 stitch. So I could cut all this out, but then you can also see more of how people crochet. So I have all these single crochets. So I got 9 of them. So in my next row, I want to have less. I want to decrease the amount of single crochets that I have. So I need to single crochet 2 together. So the way that I learned how to do that, so we've got these first 2 stitches, these V's, and I'm going to go under the first loop of this stitch and then go back and go under the first loop of this stitch, and it'll be kind of it'll feel like your hook is not supposed to move in that way. It'll be kind of weird going back. So now I've gone through the first hoop, first loop or whatever of the first stitch, and I'm going to come over here and it's going to stretch and look weird, and then go through the first loop of the second stitch. I'm gonna wiggle so I can get through. There you go. Alright, now I've got 2 loops on my hook. We've got the first loop, like the closest facing loop to you on these 2 stitches. So it's a single crochet, and we're just gonna yarn over. We're gonna pull through 2. I'm gonna pull through these 2 loops that we just inserted into. So now I've got 2 on our hook, and then we yarn over and pull through. So now we have a single crochet, and we have actually decreased the amount of stitches on the row. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Before we had 9. So now we have 8. So if I just continued going to single crochets across this row, we'll have 8 in this row instead of 9. So we have combined these 2 stitches in this one single crochet. So that is what a single crochet 2 together, or a single crochet decrease, would look like. And it's something that you do kind of toward the end of your little amigurumi ball to make it decrease. And sometimes it can be hard when the yarn is tight and when you're getting smaller and smaller and when you're stuffing it and whatnot. So since your little cabbage pattern has a half double crochet decrease, so let's do a half double crochet here. So I yarned over first, went into, pulled through, yarn over, pull through 3. So now I've got a half double crochet, which is just a little bit bigger than a single crochet. So how would we do this? Well, to do any kind of decrease, whether it's a single crochet or a half double crochet or a double crochet or a treble crochet, you treat it like you would a normal stitch, because normally we would just go through these 2, but here instead we're going through these 2. So that's the only difference, and you can treat everything else like the same version of your old stitch. So what did we do last time when we half double crocheted? We yarned over first and we inserted into our stitch. So previously we would go like this, insert into the stitch, but now we're going to decrease, and then we're going to do 1, 2, and we're going to go to this loop, go into this loop. So I'm going to go into the first loop of the stitch, going to kind of maneuver around, have my hook go into the first loop of the second stitch. Want to get a good angle, so we've got, this is the second stitch, first loop of second stitch, there. So now we've gone through just the first loop of the second stitch. We've got 2 on our hook. So then we yarn over, pull through these 2. Now I've got 3, so then we yarn over, pull through all 3. So now those 2 stitches are combined. So we can do this again, and we go yarn over like we're going to do a normal half double crochet stitch, but instead of going through these 2, we're going to go this one and then this one, so we can decrease. So this is a half double crochet decrease or a half double crochet 2 together. So then we go into the first loop of this stitch, kind of twist over, second loop, the stitch. There you go. Yarn over, pull through these 2 loops, and wiggle a little bit. Now I've got 3 on the hook, yarn over, pull through 3. So now we have double crocheted those 2 together. And here you can kind of see that we are making this kind of curvy because this is more stitches, more yarn than this. So then it makes sense that our thing is going to curve more. If this were the top of a circle, then it's going to curve inward, and then we can eventually close it. So that's why it's helpful to have decreases. So you kind of increase and make it bigger, and then you'll decrease and make it smaller. And these are very common in amigurumi and stuffed animals, but not as common in the Afghans and such, because the blanket, you don't really want the blanket to go in and out, really. You just want it to kind of be a one straight blanket, so there's not as much of the increasing and decreasing in those. So those are basic stitches for amigurumi, for the little stuffed animals. I'm going to look through this pattern again to see if there is something that would be helpful. So we did stitch, slip stitch, chain, half double crochet, half double crochet, 2 together, half double crochet, 2 together. So in this one we're just kind of increasing. You can see here that they use the asterisks, and if you forgot what that means, it's repeat instructions given between asterisks until the end of each round. So that's a very common thing in crochet instructions. So when we're looking at this, we have just done 7 inside the magic circle. We have just increased in each one, so now we have 14. So what do? We do 1 half double crochet in the first stitch, 2 half double crochet in the next stitch, repeat around. So then it'll be like half double crochet, increase, half double crochet, increase. So we're going like 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. In my head, when I count, I kind of just go 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, and then it kind of repeats. So that's how you would do that, and then at the end you can count the stitches to make sure that you have 21. And then on round 4 you have this again. Half double crochet in first stitch. 1 half double crochet in the first 2 stitches. So the first 2 stitches you see, you go 1 half double crochet in the first stitch, 1 half double crochet in the second stitch. In the third stitch is 2 half double crochet, so then you increase in the third stitch. And then in the fourth stitch you go back to this, the fourth stitch, 1 half double crochet, fifth stitch, 1 half double crochet because you do it in 2 stitches, sixth stitch, 2 half double crochet, and then you repeat, and then that's 28. So then they do that again for 5, 1 half double crochet in the first 3 stitches. So first stitch, half double crochet, second stitch, half double crochet, third stitch, half double crochet, fourth stitch, 2 half double crochet. And then the fifth stitch, repeat again, 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, 3, increase. Round 6 through 9, they'll do this, and then at this point I usually write down on a notepad or in my phone what round I'm on, if there's going to be a lot of rounds. Then I can keep track of where I am. Half double crochet in each stitch around. So this number is the same as this number because you're not increasing or decreasing, you're just using 35 stitches. So you just go around, every stitch gets 1 half double crochet. And then this is adding eyes, make a V shape, so then it's just kind of sewing the cute little guy. They use these safety eyes which have screws on the back. And that stuff is easier to do at this point because then you don't have the stuffing on the inside and you can kind of sew it without stuffing, so that's why patterns will have you kind of make this kind of halfway through sometimes. So and then we decrease. Half double crochet in the first 3 stitches. So first stitch, half double crochet, second stitch, half double crochet, third stitch, half double crochet, half double crochet, 2 together. So in the 4th and 5th stitches, you take in the first loops of each stitch and then you crochet together. So then in the 6th stitch, 1, 2, 3, 7 and 8th, crochet together. So then you'll have 28 at the end. So you had 35 is going to decrease to 28. And then you do that again for round 11, for round 12, and this is where it gets the hardest because you're going to stuff with the fiber fill, and then the last row will be kind of difficult depending on how big you stuff it. If you stuff it really big, then it'll be kind of hard to like force the yarn around, but usually the bottom is like you don't really see it much anyway, so it's okay if the stuffing kind of sits out. So then in this one, in the last round, round 13, half double crochet 2 together 7 times. So all 14 of these stitches you'll do together. So stitch 1 and 2 together, 3 and 4 together, 5 and 6 together. So then you have 7 at the end. Tie off, leaving 6-inch tail, weave tail through the last 7 stitches and pull tight, secure with a few tight knots and weave in ends. So at that point they want you to go, you've cut off your tail. Oh, and tying off, I'd have to crochet a whole little ball for you to see tying off, maybe. Well, actually, I don't think I would have to. So to tie off, you pull up your last little loop, and then you cut the yarn, and then you feed the yarn through that loop, and then you pull it tight, usually. So, and then it says weave tail through the last 7 stitches, and so I think that they want you to take a needle and go so that you kind of have the yarn tying that secure. And then you could just secure, kind of tie around, take the needle, take your yarn needle, and kind of go into and out of the stitches. A lot of times these won't come unraveled because you're not like pulling on the individual yarns, and so then it's really easy to just kind of like a whole bunch, and then you can pull it out and cut it off without tying a bunch of knots in it. But you can tie knots if you want. If you know that this is like the bottom and no one's gonna see it, then you're like, all right, well let me tie a knot there so they can make sure that it's not gonna come off or whatever. And then weaving in ends just means that if you have this extra yarn, if you have yarn from the very beginning of the project or at the end of the project, then you can just kind of weave it in to make sure that no one sees it. And weaving it in is really easy when you're doing amigurumi or stuffed animals. It's harder for the blankets because you can see both sides of it, but for this you can't really see the inside, so then if you like wove it in and then had the tail kind of go on the inside, then you can't see it, so then it's really easy. And also if this is like the bottom, if this is like the butt of the animal, then no one's gonna really look at the butt that much, so it'll be very easy. The leaves, half double crochets, increasing, assembling it, and then this is kind of like sewing, so this isn't really crocheting that skill. And then they've got a little YouTube tutorial that's very nice. So I'll make something small and then you can see how tie off, what that looks like, what that means. I know the tutorial is very long, but hopefully you can kind of go and I don't know, just look at the specific stitches that you want. Maybe if I uploaded it to YouTube I could figure out how to do the little timestamps or whatever. Maybe I'll do that. Don't know how to do that, but I know some creators do that, which is very helpful. So I'm just making something small. I'm thinking whether I should use like a crappy yarn that I don't really like so I can cut it off. I might do that. So let's switch yarn types. Ooh. Hoo-hoo. Fancy. So this is the chunky yarn that I was using. Big boy. What is it called? Lion Brand Home Tune USA 5 acrylic, super bulky, size 6. And it says it wants you to use an N size hook. So yarns will have recommendations for the hook. A lot of times for amigurumi, you use a smaller hook than is suggested here. But even so, this is a J. This is a J, so this is way too small, and this is N. So you got J, K, L, M, N. So this is like 5 sizes too small than what's recommended. So this is my biggest boy, but they recommend like a big boy like N. There's knitting and stuff. So, yep. So that's what it is. Chunky boy. Let's go. I was deciding which one. I think I'll do orange. So I've got a lot of orange, and it is very bright and colorful and beautiful. So this hook is kind of big for this guy. Let's check what size of hook it wants. This recommends an I, J, K. So this is one size too big. But for amigurumi, they'll often do. Let me see what. I'm getting lessons on amigurumi specifically, the sizes of the yarn and the needles. So let's see what hook that they want. They want a size G. G, H, I, J. So they want sizes, 2 sizes smaller than an I, 3 sizes smaller than what we currently have. And a lot of times amigurumi will do F or G. This is medium weight yarn. And this is medium weight yarn, 4, medium weight yarn. So they'll use a smaller hook to get smaller size for the amigurumi, for the little creature. So if you're using a blanket, I think that these hooks are kind of recommended for blankets, for scarves. Like if you were making this, then they would recommend you use a looser hook so it's not so tight and so it's softer and nicer to hold. So, but for amigurumi, they don't want it to be loose, so they want it to be tight, so then that's why it's smaller than this recommended one. So let's go get a G. G. No, I think G might be the purple one. Ah. Okay. Okay, you are being held. Because I know that I use the G a lot, so I recognize that it's the purple one. So this one is a G. G, 4.0 millimeters. So that is the size of this one. So this is the recommended hook size. So let's do this. I will make a little loop. There we go. Pull it a little tighter. 1, 2, 3. Oh, shoot. So sometimes I do this where I accidentally use the wrong yarn, but this is not the end of the world. So I accidentally got the little tiny bit instead of the big bit, so I'm just gonna go and pull this out until I get back to my first loop. It's a really easy fix, and then I just grab the right one. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Then I'm going to work into the second one from the hook, because that's a very common thing to do. I'm going to half double crochet because I like half double crocheting, and then your little thingies in half double crochets. I think it's a very nice stitch. And I'm used to doing amigurumi, so I'm used to doing it a little bit tight too. But this would be tighter than you would make it for like a blanket. Struggling to get that one. All right. Alright, the hard part is done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stitches. And I see I also, if you can see that, I missed a little strand there. I believe. So I'm going to try to go back and put that on the hook. Yeah, so now it looks normal. So let me chain 1, turn, double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, half double crochet. And this is one thing where you can put a stitch marker, like this is my first stitch, but you might be confused into thinking this little bump is your first stitch. So that would be why stitch markers would be helpful on like the flat kind of patterns, crochets. There we go. I can see that my chain is kind of looser than these stitches. I made these stitches pretty tight, so that's kind of making it smaller. So when you're doing a bid project, it's nice to be able to try to make your stitches all the same tension so that it doesn't vary in size that much, which is easier to do when you practice a little bit. Hard to do at the beginning. So I'll say that this is the end of my project, and I could pretend that this was really long or really big. This is the end. And I go, okay, well, how do I finish it off? I've got this loop here on my hook. So we basically just want to take this and pull it through there. And we don't even have to do it with the hook. So I'll do it with fingers so you can kind of see it easier. Doing it with the hook can be easier too if you're used to the hook. So I just pulled this to make it kind of big because we will pull this yarn through there. So this is the yarn that's going into the skein. So we are going to cut this. So maybe it wants us to leave a 6-inch tail. So that's maybe like 6 inches. So yeah, all right, 6-inch tail. So there we go. We've cut it. Now it's free. But if we leave it like this, then people could pull this out and unravel the whole thing. So we want it to unravel the whole thing, and so that's why people finish it off. So we've got this loop, and we want to just pull that through here. So you can kind of separate it with your fingers and pull it like this. And then it's pulled through. And then you pull this tighter. When I'm using my hook, sometimes it's easier for me to kind of have this loop. Maybe I'll pull it tighter a little bit. So I go, alright, I'll have this loop. And then I'll just yarn over and pull through one last time. And this time we pull everything through. So we go shoop. And now this is through. So the basic thing of tying off is just you have this little loop at the end, and then you want to have your little tail going through the loop. So, boop. So that's pretty easy to do. So now what do? We pull it tighter. So you can see that it'll slowly get more small. So at that point, that is good. And then when you weave in the ends, then it won't be able to come unraveled or anything. You can also pull it tighter. And then this knot will be it feels harder. It feels harder than these ones because you pulled it so tight, so now it's kind of a tight little knot. But the look does not look very much different. So if you want to pull it really tight, you can. I usually keep it looser like I had it before. And at this point I can't like go in. I have to go in with a needle and make it looser and stuff. And then you would weave in the ends. So to do that, people usually use a yarn needle, but you could also use it with your hook. Sometimes I didn't have yarn needles, so then I just used my hook to go through and weave in the ends. It's kind of annoying. Got my yarn needle. And then there's not really an exact science. You just kind of like zoop, zoop, zoop. Maybe I want to go in through the back, go front, and go through this stitch. Go through this stitch, and then this stitch, and then this stitch, and pull through, and then maybe like go back through there, and then there, and then there. I don't know. It doesn't really matter too much. This is just kind of a way to keep your crochet from having the loose ends. And when you're weaving it in, you wouldn't want to pull it really tight. Like this is the normal size of this little project right now. If I pulled this really tight, then everything would scrunch up. And that's not what we want it to look like. We wanted it to look like our little rectangle, our little blankie or whatever. So when you're weaving in the ends, you don't really want to pull any tighter than is the normal kind of tension for this little thing. So like, oh yeah, now I got this loop. I want to pull it tighter so there's no loop. So I'll pull tighter and tighter. You're like, maybe it's a little loose. I'll pull a little tighter. And then, okay, well, that looks more normal. So now I don't need to make it more tighter because then it looks kind of, And I think in the amigurumi they said, like, tie knots, so you could tie a knot. I guess I would go through and then have this loop and then kind of put the needle through that loop. Let me try that again in slow motion. Zoop. Zoop. So then if I pull this, then that would kind of make a knot. But I wouldn't really suggest making knots specifically because then they kind of like, then there's a little bump. So I think I think in that pattern maybe they made knots like on the bottom where you couldn't see the bump very much. You could see the little bump, so you should just weave in. And then at this point, then I just took my needle, took my thread out of the needle, and you can keep going until you get like all of this woven in. But sometimes your tail is just really long and you don't got time for all that. So like I wove it in to here and here, and I wove it up there, and I wove it up there, and at this point I'm like, I don't think this is going to come unraveled. I think that no matter what I do, what I stretch it, I don't think that that's going to come unraveled. So I'm going to go and cut this close to the project. So now the little tail's there and you can't even see it. So, and then when I stretch it, it's not coming undone. So at this point you would have to go in and like manually try really, really hard to tear this apart. So it's very strong, like a very strong fabric when you get done with it, get done with crocheting. And this is the beginning end, and so then you would always, you would do that as well. You would try to weave in this end, go joo 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 joo, and then you would cut that off. And then you can have whatever little thing that you want without having the little stringly bits. With amigurumi, sometimes you'll make like a little magic circle, and then it'll turn into a sphere, and then you have the first little tail, and you don't even need to weave it in a lot of times, so it'll form a sphere, and I just kind of like tuck it into there, and then when you're crocheting more and more and more, and then you stuff it and you put the stuffing in there, and the tail is secure, like it's not gonna become unraveled, it's inside. So with the amigurumi and the stuffed animals, then it's much easier to do that, so you don't have to weave this in. So that's what I'd like to do, but you could also choose to weave it in like before you finish the whole thing, or maybe even after you finish the whole thing. I don't know, if the thing is sticking out, you could just weave it in. So this is your little project. Got extra string, so you can keep the string for like more stuffing or stitch markers or whatever, or you could throw it away. So that's basically a lot of the things that you'll see in crochet, and these little stuffed animal crochets. So the other things are just kind of sewing based, where you go like, how do I know how to put in the safety eyes, or how do they sew these things together so they look so nice, and that's even something that I am not that good at sometimes. Sometimes people will sew things so pretty, and then I go, well, mine doesn't look that pretty, and so that's something that a lot of people have different tutorials on, of like what stitches to go in and out of to make the attachments look nice, what kind of stitches to make for a little mouth, like you do a running stitch or do you do a back stitch or whatever. So those are things that are specific to amigurumi that they focus on, but that's the basic part of the actual crochet that you're making. And well, crochet is a lot of fun, so I hope that you have fun crocheting. And if you see any other stitches, if you do another pattern in the future that is like front post crochet or something, so it says front loop only, so then you go, okay, I'm just going to do the first loop in the single crochet SS. So this is interesting because the other pattern, this pattern doesn't even have a like glossary on what the stitches are called. So this pattern maker was kind of lazy. They didn't want to put all that stuff. They didn't want to put in abbreviations, stitches, US terms. They didn't want to do that. Slip stitch, this person said SLST, so they're like, this is what my slip stitch is. This person said, no, we're just gonna have you guess that SS is slip stitch. So some things you'll see like that where it'll be different, and you'll be like, I don't know what that is. Like when I just looked at that, I didn't know what SS was. I was like, what? But it's a slip stitch. They said you should know how to work in the round, increase, decrease, half double crochet, and slip stitch. So then I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But interestingly, they didn't say single crochet in here, and yet they have more single crochets in there. So these people were a little bit more difficult. So this is a pattern that would be more difficult for a beginner because of the confusingness of it. Of like, what do I do? What do you want from me in this specific case? So yeah, sometimes you'll have things that are confusing. Fashion off. Use brown yarn to embroider chocolate chips onto the ice cream, and they're not going to tell you exactly how to do that, so then they just assume that you kind of know, like, okay, I'll just go into one stitch and into the other, go out one stitch into the other, but then people can do it different ways, and yeah, all that nonsense. So lots of different intricacies of these patterns. So there's been times where I've looked at patterns and I'm like, Mom, I don't know what they're trying to tell me. And then Mom will look at it and she'll be like, I don't know what they're trying to tell you either, but we just kind of guess. So sometimes there will be a pattern where I've worked a few rows and then I find out that I did it wrong, so then I have to go back. But it happens sometimes, and it's okay to go back. You shouldn't feel too frustrated if you're like, oh, I have to undo the last 10 rows that I did. Like, it kind of sucks because you think, oh, this 10 rows, that was like 2 hours of work. But if we did not want to spend time making cool things as crafters, then we wouldn't. Like, we enjoy doing these things, and it makes us happy doing these things. And so we should remember that even though sometimes we make mistakes and we have to undo things, it doesn't mean that we're worthless. It means that we're just trying to do something fun, do something that we enjoy, and make something that we enjoy. So you shouldn't get too hung up on those things, especially if you make mistakes, especially if you go like, this is crap, this is something that I do not like. Then it's fine, because we tried to learn something new. And I would guess that most of the world does not know how to crochet. They don't even know the first thing about trying to do it. So if you're someone who can even make one little stitch, then you're much more talented in that regard, and a lot of people look up to you. So I think it's something to keep in mind when you make crafts, all sorts of different crafts, sewing and crochet and embroidery and graphic design and cutting and stuff, lots of stuff. So yeah, so basically dems to stitches. I will try to upload this to YouTube and mark out the different sections so that you can go back, because that would be nice. And then if there's other stitches that you want me to make a video or do in the future, then I could do that. And I could also make a little Word document guide or whatever too, but visual learning is pretty nice too. So yes, so hope you have a good day, and I hope you have happy crocheting. Goodbye.